Good evening, dear colleagues. Today we would like to present to you our project about the economic geography of Brazil. It will consist of three parts: economic history, resources and economic and social structure, and finally, economic position and development of Brazil. Now we are moving on to the first part of our project, economic history of Brazil. It consists of three sections in terms of modes of production which Brazil passed through. The first mode is the pre-class society. This mode existed in Brazil until the Portuguese colonialism. Also, we should highlight that the pre-colonial Brazilian agriculture involved highly developed preserving technology. Moreover, Brazilians cultivated a wide range of crops. Now we are moving on to the feudalism. The feudal mode of production started in Brazil with Portuguese expansion due to the system of donatarias. As for industries, the first one was sugar industry. However, in the middle of the 17th century, the Caribbean sugar boom caused a decline in the Brazilian sugar exports, which increased Portuguese exploratory efforts and led to the gold discovery. Another industry which also influenced Brazil's economy in the late 18th century was cotton. In 1822, Brazil gained independence, so I would like to describe the main impacts of colonialism. On the one hand, Portuguese expansion slowed down the development of Brazil as the country was constantly dependent on its colonizer both economically and politically. Moreover, Portugal has depleted Brazil's resource reserves, for instance, gold. On the other hand, Portugal supplied Brazil with the latest technologies of that time, developed various the industries of the country, and brought Brazil to the world market arena, which gave a strong impetus to the development of the state after becoming independent. The coffee industry was transitional for Brazil in terms of modes of production. It led to the establishment of essential industry links, development of light industries, urbanization growth, and so on. Now I would like to move on to the capitalism, which was followed by the country's industrialization in the 1870s. That started because of a forced necessity due to the expanding scale of coffee production. Moreover, the abolishment of slavery also contributed to the industrial development as the number of workers diminished. However, the sweeping changes in the process of the industrialization started in the 1930s due to decline of coffee industry. Industrialization led to the decline in light industries and growth in the heavy industries. Firstly, the government started to promote a policy of economic diversification and economic planning and established the first large government enterprise. However, industrialization began to gain serious strength only starting with 1940s, 1950s, when the Brazilian government introduced economic liberalism and established a policy of import substitution industrialization. As a result, in early 1960s, there were already a fairly diversified industrial structure in Brazil. As for impacts of industrialization in Brazil, the Center-South region has historically more developed infrastructure and a great number of skilled workers, therefore the industrial expansion was really effective there. At the same time, the Northeast region has historically really low internal linkage, the anti-age elite, and the severe climate that led to distorted industrialization. Now I would like to move on to the conclusions. Firstly, Brazil didn't pass through all modes of production. Secondly, the strongest impetus in its development of industrialization was 1930s. Thirdly, from Portugal's discovery of Brazil until the late 1930s, the Brazilian economy depends on the extraction of raw materials for export.
Now I'm going to talk about resources, economic and social structure. Brazil is rich with a big number of natural resources: natural gas, oil, coal, minerals, and forests. According to World Bank, total natural resources rents in 2019 is 3.5 million % of GDP. However, FAO organization says that Brazil is the world's leading producer of tin and iron ore. Also, country has large deposits of diamonds, copper, and many other minerals. However, the country has no significant oil reserves. Talking about economic structure of the country, first of all, it should be mentioned that until 2012, Brazil was quite successful as it was one of the world's fast-growing economies. The main sector of Brazilian economy is agricultural sector, which includes forestry, fishing, hunting, and since the country is the largest exporter of soy, rice, coffee, tobacco, banana, and cotton, shares of agricultural sector is 5.91%. For comparison, the world average in 2020, based on 160 countries, is 10.86%. Second sector of economy is industry. The country has diverse and developed industrial sector. This development in the sector relates to available cheap labor and plenty of raw materials. And last sector, which is the largest in Brazil, service sector. Service sector has such sub-sectors as financial, hospital. In 2019, this sector contributes with 63.3% of the value of GDP according to Statistica. Moreover, talking about employment rate, it worth saying that Trade in Economics tells the rate in 2021 has increased to 55.10%. The highest employment rate was reached in 2013, the rate was 57.30%. Especially in agricultural sector, employment rate is 9.12%. The major industries include iron steel production, chemical production. The geographic distribution of manufacturing industries in Brazil has been changing significantly. The geographical distribution of the industries can be explained in two ways. In the first case, it might be as a result of decreased participation in employment of the industrial centers. In the second case, it can be that recent improvements in the connection among cities has resulted to different concentrations. Now let's move to the labor force. According to OECD, trade union dynasty is 12.7% in 2019. Moreover, the organization says that about 18 of the adults in Brazil have attained tertiary education. This is similar to the attainment rate in Mexico. As the level of bureaucracy in labor markets is quite high, labor law is inflexible. The APA reports also shows that companies have a hard time adjusting to changes in the marketplace because labor law imposes a series of conditions on them. Moreover, employers are obligated to make payments to trade unions that do not fight on their behalf. Labor unions are created for collecting money. Thus, the country should work on this its labor law. And finally, we move to the topic of social structure. Brazil population rate is 2.73% and the country ranks number 6 in the list of countries by population. Yearly population growth rate is 0.72%, birth rate is 30.703 and death rate is 6.531. Mortality rate is 13.1. Urbanization rate is 87.7 according to Statistica. And the conclusion, Brazil has inflexible labor law, the country is diverse in terms of resources and industries, seventh country by population, economy is still developing.
Now I would like to talk about economic position and development of Brazil. According to World Bank, the gross domestic product in Brazil is 1.28% of the world economy. As you can see on the graph, the GDP of Venezuela and Argentina is less by about 1,000 and Peru by 1,200. The GDP per capita is equivalent to 79% of the world's average. The HDI index for 2019 is 0.765. The employed population is 51%. Yet unemployment is one of the biggest challenges facing Brazil. The job searching can take years, young people get discouraged and are considered as long-term unemployed. The highest point of productivity in Brazil reached an all-time high in January of 2022 and a record low in October of 2002. For trade openness indicator, the value in 2020 was 32%. There is an export-oriented economy in Brazil, dependent on the shipments of raw material and manufactured goods. Brazil exported a total of $230 billion in 2019, being the number 25 in the list of world exporters. The most common export partners are China, United States, Argentina, Netherlands, and Japan. Brazil imported $177 billion in 2019, making it the number 27 trade destination in the world. The most common destination for the imports of Brazil are China, United States, Argentina, South Korea, and Germany. Speaking about economic integration projects, the country is a member of many major world organizations. The main integration projects take place, of course, on the South American continent, within the framework of Mercosur and UNASUR. Interestingly, Brazil was one of the main initiators of the creation of the UNASUR, whose policy was aimed at creating a common market in South America. In general, Brazil's foreign policy is aimed at strengthening its own authority and increasing interactions with leading world powers. Nevertheless, there are lots of social and economic challenges. The high level of corruption revealed in recent years has led to the waste of state resources and income inequality. Unemployment is the most common problem of the economy. Unemployment rates, which remain at the same level due to recession of 2014, are now growing again due to COVID-19. The outbreak of a new virus in 2019 led to 7.5 million cases of infection and about 175,000 deaths during the year. Measures have been taken to stop the spread of the virus around the world. Land borders were closed and entry by air from many countries was restricted for months. Due to it, GDP decreased by 5% in 2020, and only now in 2022 the GDP is starting to recover. In conclusion, GDP constantly varies due to external circumstances, as Brazil's economy is export-oriented. The country cooperates with many countries and is an important member of many world organizations. The main problem in Brazil is the high unemployment rate, which has not changed for more than 7 years.
Now I would like to move on to the general conclusions. Firstly, Brazil experienced 3 modes of production. The most essential industry for its economic history was coffee, as it led to the industrial development. Secondly, Brazil is a very developed country, which is quite diverse in the field of resource consumption and industry. Thirdly, there are lots of integration projects which help the economic development of the country. However, the number of young unemployed is still high, and this is a problem needs new solutions.